Hi, Katrina. How are you doing, my love? Thank you for joining me.
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm really well. I haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. It's lovely to see
Yeah,
you
I've
again.
been laid low with a bad case of COVID. Couldn't get out
Oh,
of bed.
gosh, you're looking better now, though.
Yes, yeah, I am. So,
Excellent. Glad to see you again. Welcome, Nish. Lovely to see you
Hey, Ellen,
again.
lovely to
Welcome,
meet you too.
Stanley. God, we've just spent an hour together, spending more time together. Amazing. And hello, Alison. Lovely for you to join us. Thank you so much. This is your first time at the forum, I believe. Is that correct? I don't know if you can hear me, Alison. Um, that's okay. You're muted though. But don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. But I just wanted to welcome you to the forum. But yes, just to let you know, I'll let the room run for another couple of minutes, see who else is joining us. But if the people who've been here before will know how I do this. If you can go into the chat and let me know what you'd like to gain from today's session, and then that allows me to shape it a little bit. Obviously we have a typical presentation, but then I can then discuss what it is that you need, so then you get what you want from this presentation today. So yep, just go into the chat and let me know what you'd like to gain from today's session. And yes, we will get started in about a minute. I just want to see if there's a few more stragglers who might want to come in, because you know what people are like. But yes, okay. Stanley's my fellow treadmill walker. Wonderful. You always walk a lot faster than I do as well. Oh, we've got Alan who's about to pop in as well. But yes, do go into the chat and let me know what you'd like to gain from today's session. That makes it helpful for me, and then that way I can fashion it to make sure you get what you need. Hello, Alan.
Hello there.
Hello, hope you're doing well. Your camera's not on, just let you know.
I'm off camera. I'm not well, but
oh, bless you. Well, hopefully you can hear us and you can see us.
yeah, listening.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, I'm getting a bit of feedback from you, Alan. So could you just
sorry?
That's okay. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's get started. There might be a few more people who are joining us, but hopefully I'll just keep an eye on the waiting room and see if there's anybody who comes in. But let's get started. So first of all, thank you and welcome for coming to the forum. If you give me 2 minutes, I'm just going to share my screen. Zoom is being, I don't know if anybody else is having this. Is Zoom being really buggy this week? Or is it just my Zoom being buggy this week? I don't know what's going on, but it's updated twice already, just before a meeting as well, just to annoy me. It's like, what, can you not tell me earlier that you need updating? But here we go. So I am going to, okay, yes, it's allowing me to share. Hooray. Okay, so can you all see these slides? If you can, great, wonderful. I just wanted to make sure that it's just me that's seeing them. Okay, so first of all, thank you for coming to the Thought Leader Author Forum. Most of you have been here before, but just to let you know the structure that I take people through, it's always in 2 parts. First part is we talk about the topic of today. So today's topic is all about the 6 secrets to creating an inspiring book. And this always surprises some people because, well, you'll see. I won't get too into it, but it always surprises people what actually makes an inspiring book. And then part 2, my favorite bit of the forum, which is when I open it up to you guys. That's when you can ask me questions. If you're already an author, have you used some of these techniques? Is there anything new in here? I want to get your feedback and also your thoughts. I've always been amazed in the forums sometimes in the past where one member has said something and then somebody else said, oh, I never thought of that, and then they've taken, and I just sat there in the background going, I don't need to do anything here, my work is done. People are actually helping each other, which is wonderful. That's why I created the forum. I do a lot of masterclasses and workshops for other groups of people. I enjoy doing them, but one thing I like about the forum is I just speak for maybe 15-20 minutes and then it's you guys get involved. It isn't just me talking and you guys just absorbing information. So, and also, because you come today, you will get this workbook sent to you by my awesome assistant, Joycey. She will send this to you. It's usually, I would say, mid-morning to early afternoon UK time when she sends it, but you'll get this email. It means that you can take notes if you want to take notes, but you don't have to. You can just sit back and listen to me, knowing that you're going to get this workbook and all the notes sent to you by email by Joycey tomorrow morning or early afternoon. Okay. And also, just to thank you for coming to the forum, you can pick one of these amazing courses. That's the difficulty, picking one of these courses. But you can pick one of these amazing courses and we'll make a donation on your behalf. So it costs you nothing, but just say thank you. You can pick whichever course you feel resonates most with you, and we will make a donation on your behalf. I think I have the link. Let me just see if I've got the link, or if I don't have the link, then I can easily get it. There we go. So if I put this into the chat now, you can just click on that now, pick a cause, and we will make a donation on your behalf. Like I said, it costs you absolutely nothing. Okay, so what makes a book inspiring? Okay, well, I did a poll with my audience a couple of days ago just to see what makes a book inspiring. And these are the main ones that people pick. Well, actually, I picked them because I read an article and these were the main 3 things that people said. So I thought, okay, well, let me turn that into a poll and give it to my audience to see what they say. So the 3 main things, I think it was a Forbes article, the 3 main things people said really inspired them, you know, they felt a book was really inspiring, was stories, so inspiring stories, practical advice, and passion. I'll also put in an other just to see if somebody wants to, but as you can see, nobody voted other, so there we go. So stories had a whopping 69%, practical advice had 19%, passion was 11%. I mean, just to give you an idea of some of the comments that were left. So we've got Wendy who said, stories in clear language are key for me. I like to learn and see it in practice via stories. Donna says, stories are always a great way to share a point and allow your reader to understand in an easier, more interesting way. I think of books like The E-Myth, great stories. Yeah, everyone talks about The E-Myth, one of the biggest business books in the last 20 years. And it does have some fantastic stories. But this is what's interesting. I mean, maybe I was being a bit cheeky creating this poll, because actually the reality is none of these are actually the most inspiring. It's what people say is inspiring. If you ask most people and say, what's really inspiring about this book, they'll be like, oh, I love these stories, or it gave me practical advice, or it felt so passionate, the author was passionate. But really, there is something else that most people are not even aware of that truly creates inspiring books. And that is when the author helps to facilitate implementation. Now, nobody will ever tell you that, apart from someone like me, because I'm a publisher. But apart from someone like me, no one's going to tell you this. Because it's not that people are lying to you, by the way. It's just they don't know. They just don't know. The reality is we live in a world now that is awash with books, self-help books, how-to books, guidebooks, all of these books telling you how to, in every aspect of your life, there are myriad of books helping you now. So if you want to if you've got issues with a career, if you want to renegotiate your salary, if you want to open a business, if you want to succeed in business, if you want a great marriage, if you want a great relationship with your children, if you want to have a great sex life, there's books everywhere. We should all be living charmed lives by now, by the way, folks. That we should all be, Alison's laughing, but it's true. We should be all walking around like, oh my God, I've got everything licked. I've got the best marriage, I've got the best business. So why don't we? Why are some of us, many of us, still walking around sadder than ever, more upset than ever, more negative than ever, when we've got all of these books telling us what we need to do to have a great life in whatever aspect you're looking at, business, career, family life, relationships, whatever it is. The reason is we have all this amazing information, practical advice, inspiring stories, passionate authors, but many of them are not facilitating implementation. Think of how many books you've read and thought, oh, that was a really good book. How much of that did you implement? Probably nowhere near as much as you wanted to, because life got in the way. This is what we do. We read these amazing books and go, oh, that's amazing. And then we get on with our lives. Unfortunately, you can read the best information in the world, but if you don't implement it, your life's not going to change. In whatever facet you're talking about, your life isn't going to change. So what you're doing with the book, by the way, you don't have to read any of this. This is just a fictitious book that I might write one day. I struggle to write, by the way, because I'm helping so many people write their own books. My own book ideas end up on the back burner. So this is a book that I potentially could write at some point, but I'm not entirely sure when. So you don't have to really look at it. But the goal of any nonfiction book, unless you're famous and you're writing a memoir or an autobiography or something like that, but the goal of really any nonfiction book is to help people. People read nonfiction because they want to get something. They want to be able to know something, or most likely able to do something. That's why they're reading it. So your goal is you want them to get them from A, which is I don't know something, I feel disempowered, I'm stuck, I'm in some kind of negative state. And by the time they get to B at the end of your book is I know what to do. But it's not just knowing what to do. You got to help them implement it. We are all now voracious content consumers. Blame the internet for that. We're just got content knocking our faces every second of our lives at the moment. And that's why we have all these people now. And it's like, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to do that. Yeah, knowing's not good enough. This is why I've got several friends who they seem to read a book a week. And I'm like, wow, you're so knowledgeable. Why is your life terrible most of the time? Because they're telling me down at the pub that their life's terrible. I'm like, but you read so many self-help books and you read so many guys. Why is your life terrible? Your life should be amazing. You know, they're not implementing these things. So if you're thinking, well, how do I do that? Because you're probably thinking, okay, brilliant. Now I've got it. The main thing that actually makes a book inspiring is people actually read the book and then go and do something. But how on earth do I do that? They could be a million miles away from me. They could be living in another country or even in the same country, but I'm not in their home. So I can't, beat them with a stick. Don't beat people with a stick, but metaphorically say, hey, you've got to implement what I told you in my book. How do you do that? Well, if you've ever taught, if you've ever been a former teacher or anything like that, then you may have come across Bloom's revised taxonomy of learning. Every good teacher is very aware of Bloom's, and not only is aware of it, they implement it. Think of your favorite teacher at school. I guarantee you that teacher really, really loved Bloom's revised taxonomy of learning, and they made sure it was in everything that they taught you. Think of your favorite teacher at school. I want you to just imagine your favorite teacher. Mine was a lovely lady called Mrs. Lilly. And what I really loved about Mrs. Lilly is everything she said, she made sure that not just me, the rest of the kids as well, we actually understood it. She was not one of those teachers who just wrote on a blackboard or a whiteboard and expected you to just copy it down into your exercise books. You can see how old I am, by the way. It was exercise books then. It wasn't laptop. Katrina's nodding her head. It's like now they have they have like writing pads and iPads. And it's like, no, we didn't have that. We had exercise books. But she didn't do that. She didn't just expect us to silently read textbooks. She made the learning come to life. And when you can do that, that is how you implement. That's how you get your readers to implement things and do things with the teachings in your book. So as you can see, there's Bloom's revised taxonomy of learning. You've got at the bottom, remembering facts. That is the most basic form of getting people to remember things so that they can start implementing it. Then you've got understanding concepts, applying processes, analyzing results, evaluating options, and right at the top, creating new knowledge. So let me go through. This is a hypothetical book, okay? Because I thought rather than just give you, it's very difficult to actually explain this to you if you've never come across Bloom's. It's very difficult to explain this to you in a strategic way. So I think it's much easier if I just created just an example. So say we have a hypothetical book. It's a book that I'm going to write on business travel. So this book is going to be all about, business travel and the business travel related carbon emissions. That's a big thing in the moment in the UK. We all businesses have a mandate to actually reduce, to get to net zero as fast as possible. but you always have business travel related carbon emissions. How do you mitigate that? So say I want to write a book. I'm not, by the way, writing a book on this subject. This is just an example. But let's just say, so as you can see with Bloom's revised taxonomy of learning on the left-hand side, the very, very first thing you want people to do is to remember facts. This is so basic. This is the first rung. And yet I'm amazed how many books there are out there, even quite well-known books, by the way, books that have become bestsellers, but they don't facilitate any way for the reader to remember what they've read. We've all read amazing books and then we've forgotten about them. So how do you get people to remember facts? So for example, say in this hypothetical book, I don't want people just to read my facts about carbon-related emissions. I want them to be able to then go and speak to somebody in their business and be able to quote some facts about carbon emissions from air travel to a colleague, for example. That's a form of implementation. If you've got somebody in the business talking to other people in the business about, hey, we need to look at our carbon emissions. I think they're sky high and they shouldn't be, for example. How do you do that in a book when you're not there? You're not a coach, you're not a consultant, so you're not meeting that person. How can you make sure that this person does that? End of chapter quizzes. That's why I'm such a fan of them. I use them in my book. A lot of my clients use them in their books. Put quizzes into your book. Now, of course, someone can ignore your quiz and just carry on to the next chapter. There's nothing you can do there. But you'll be amazed how many people, just because there's a quiz there, they'll go, yeah, let me just see if I pass it. There's something about seeing just a quiz there that makes people go, yeah, I'll just quickly have a look at the questions. What you're now doing is you're forcing people to really consider, did they read that chapter properly? Or do they do that thing that I call zombie reading? I'm guilty of it, by the way. How many times have you done that when you've read a couple of pages and you thought, I didn't get any of that. I need to read the whole thing again. It doesn't make sense to me. Katrina's laughing. She does it all the time. It's true. You know, we just sit there, we read, and it's like, did I take any of that in? By putting an end of chapter quiz or even midway. I mean, I like end of chapter quizzes because I think it's a nice summary for the chapter. But if you've got quite a big chapter, maybe you want to put quizzes in between, in 2 or 3 quizzes in the chapter. It's entirely up to you. But it's a really, really great way for people to go, did I actually get all of that? 2 things happen. If they do get it, they get a little bit of a dopamine hit. It's like, oh, I've got everything right. I got all 4 questions right. Do you know what I mean? That makes them actually feel there's an element of accomplishment, however small. And that really adds to them feeling like, oh, this book is doing me good, and they want to carry on. The ones who do get a couple of questions wrong, guess what they're now compelled to do? It feels weird to move on to the next chapter now without going back into the previous chapter to answer those questions that they've got wrong. Yeah. So therefore, you're making sure that people are not zombie reading your book. They're actually retaining facts. And if they're retaining facts, guess what they're going to do with them? Or they're more likely to do. They're more likely to implement. Next step up from remembering facts, you want them to truly understand concepts. I've met so many people who've read books that I've read, and then I've said, so what did you get from this? And what they got from this was so surface. And I was like, is that all you got from it? There was so much more to that book, but they just got the surface bit of the book and they didn't really get into it because they didn't fully understand the concept. So for example, in this hypothetical book, say I want my reader to be able to explain how to choose airlines for business travel. At the moment, like there's all these airlines, but they don't really know which airlines are doing their bit and trying to mitigate carbon emissions, and which airlines are like, I don't really care. All I care about is profits. They don't know. Say I want them to explain how to choose airlines for business travel. This is when you introduce case studies and stories. Just always be aware that human beings are terrible when it comes to just retaining facts and figures. But if you can wrap up the knowledge into case studies and stories, especially with stories of people like them or businesses like them, whoever you're dealing with, whether you're dealing with people directly, whether you're dealing with businesses, having stories will dramatically aid retention. When I think of some of the best books I read on the learnings, I remember them because of the stories that they were wrapped up in. Okay, so always try to think, okay, whenever I do this with my clients, whenever they've written a passage and say, okay, there's a good big piece of learning here, Do you now have a story that demonstrates this piece of learning, demonstrates somebody implementing this and what result they got? That will be retained more than just the learning itself. Okay. Next step up is getting them to apply processes. Okay. So in this hypothetical book, for example, say I want them to find out why planes affect climate change on the internet. Like, why do planes affect climate change? What kind of fuel are they using? What does it actually emit? Why is it so much worse than, for example, using a train, which still uses energy, by the way, but why is it so much worse? Lots of people don't know. Like, if you'll be amazed how many people say, do you think flying or riding on a train is worse? And most people go, oh, flying is worse. Why? Because it is. And they say, well, that's not really the answer, is it? Like, why is flying worse than traveling on a train? So you want them, what you can do, and what a lot of people do, is they just put the reasons in their book. No, get them to go and do things. Turn your book into a bit of a mini workshop. Get them to go and find out. So for example, you can give them guided tasks. So in this book, what I would do is I would actually guide them through a task. Say, I want you to go step-by-step task. Go and do this. Go on the internet. What I want you can guide them. You can say things like, I want you to look for websites that have a .org in them or a .gov. Because remember, on the internet, anybody can say anything they want. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. So you could be guiding those people into actually being able to research for themselves, but guiding them to understand where the research needs to be, because you don't want them to research where it's misinformation. So that's just an example, but feel free to add guided tasks in your book. You'll see that with a lot of my clients' books. You see that in my book as well, where I guide people to go and do something. This is the key difference, I would say, with nonfiction books. Well, nonfiction books are not memoir or autobiographies. When you write an autobiography or a memoir because you're a famous person and people are just interested in your life, or if you're writing fiction, poetry, you want your book to be a page turner. You want your book to be something that people can't put down. It's actually the opposite with these kinds of books. You want people to periodically put your book down and go and do something. That facilitates implementation. Otherwise, all they're doing is just going to zombie read your book right through to the end. They may even enjoy it because you're a great writer and you've added humor and stories and all these wonderful things into your book. But guess what's going to happen? They're going to get to the end of the book and go, that was a really great read, and then do nothing with your advice. That's not the goal of these books. The goal of all of my clients' books is they want to create some kind of change in the world. Change is not going to happen just by people reading their books. They can literally have 1 billion people read their books, but if they don't do anything with that information, you've achieved nothing apart from your egos got stroked that 1 billion people have read your books, which is great. If that's what you're living for, great. But my clients don't come to me because they just want a load of people to read their books. They want action to happen. Action only happens when the readers feel compelled to go and do something with what they've just read. Okay, so set guided tasks and give them specific objectives. Imagine them actually putting your book down and going to do something, and urge them to do it. Next step up from that is analyzing results. So what we want them to do is, once they've actually gone and done a guided task, you want them to actually analyze the results themselves. Again, think of it, I'm going back to your favorite teacher. That's exactly what your favorite teacher, you're probably now thinking, oh my God, my favorite teacher was using Bloom's. That's what he or she was doing. I guarantee it. This is an old concept, by the way. Bloom's has been around, gosh, I want to say since the 50s, and may even be earlier. This is an old concept. It's nearly a century old. Okay, so your favorite teacher was very likely using Bloom's, and that's why they were your favorite teacher, because they brought their learning, their teachings to life by using these concepts. They got you to analyze results. They didn't just tell you what the results are. They got you to analyze your results, and then you to tell them what were your results. So in this hypothetical book, say you want them to analyze which websites came up on researching planes and climate change. Maybe you're part of this book. Hypothetically, I want to talk about why there are so many climate deniers and why there's so much misinformation. Where's this misinformation coming from? Because people don't just put misinformation for the sake of it. What are they getting out of it? Are they linked? There could be some links to those websites to oil lobbies, gas lobbies. You don't know. So it could be, again, you get them to analyze results. So what websites did you find? Analyze which websites are more likely to be misinformation and which websites are more likely to be true. Why are they more, not just because you're biased in one way or another. Why is one website more likely to be true than another website? Get them to complete a process and get them to record things. You can even put that into the book if you want. If you want to put in a few lines into your book where people can actually write into your book, you can do that. Some of my clients are happy with that. Some of my clients hate the idea of their books being written into. They're quite purists. That's fine too. That's actually really what a lot of my clients then do is they get people to say, hey, I've actually got a workbook that you can download and print out. Go to my website and download the workbook. Guess what they've now cleverly done? Not only have they facilitated implementation, they've created a resource that someone now needs to leave their email address to download. Now they can see who is really implementing the book, and now they can market to these people at a later date. That's an extra point, by the way. You can literally sell millions of copies of your book on Amazon. They will never tell you who bought your book. That's none of your business, sadly. That's Amazon's customer list. They're not going to tell you. So a really, really clever way to see who is reading your book is to get them to periodically drop your book and go to your website and put their email address in to download something that's handy for them. Or maybe go onto your social media and give you a follow, send you a DM, however you want to do it. Everyone has different businesses, but you want people to actually actively put their hands up and say, hey, I bought your book and I'm implementing stuff. Those are your future clients, strategic partners, maybe even investors. I've had several of my clients who put books out there and then they've ended up attracting an investor into their business because the investor actually bought the book, downloaded a few stuff and thought, this is great, I need to invest in this business. So you don't know where that's going to come from. But if that person didn't put anything that allowed somebody to download something somewhere, or at least let them know they exist, they would never found that investor. Okay, so that's an extra thing there. You can get people to complete a process and record the progress. And if you don't want it to be recorded in your book, give them something that they need to go and download to actually record that progress. Next step up, getting them to evaluate options. Again, think of your favorite teacher. They didn't just go, yeah, you've done that right. They got you to evaluate your options. Okay, so an example for this hypothetical book will be select the most effective solution to mitigate carbon emissions of business travel. You can just give people, and I see this all the time, people will write a book where they just literally say, these are the most effective solutions. They just give them the solution. Get people to work out their own solutions. Yeah, get people to actually work out what works for them. Don't just tell them. You'll know this if you've got children. I don't have children, but I have a lot of children in my life. And I've noticed with children, it's the same with adults as well. They don't like being told what to do. If you get them to think that it's their idea, oh, they're really keen. Katrina's laughing. It's so true. By the way, so it works on adults as well. If you get adults to think that they thought of that thing, they'll go and do it. It's the same thing in your book. Don't just give them a barrage of information. This is the most effective solution. Get them to.
Every woman has done it to her husband.
Oh yes. Well, we have. We've learned to do that. You know, we've learned to do that with men. But it's very, very true. So get them to choose the appropriate course of action. So in this example, select the most effective solutions to mitigate carbon emissions of business travel. Can you see how that's far more effective? First of all, because nobody likes being told what to do, get them to figure out what they should do. But also, you can't imagine every single scenario. In this case, you can't imagine every single business and what they have at their disposal to mitigate carbon emissions. So by giving them guided tasks and getting them to evaluate their own options, say, I want you to go and figure out what you can do right now to mitigate carbon emissions through business travel right now. Yeah. Final one, this is when you pop out the top. This is when it really works, like everything gels together. And this is what true inspiration comes from. Yeah. A lot of people won't tell you this because they're simply not aware. But true inspiration comes from something where you've learned something and then you've internalized it until you've created your own version, your own knowledge of it. It creates new knowledge. So for example, in this hypothetical book that I'm doing, I get them to go and create a 1-year plan to reduce travel-related carbon emissions by 30%. That is like the pinnacle for implementation now. The whole goal of this hypothetical book was to help business owners reduce their travel-related carbon emissions. If by the end I've helped them and I've got them to implement as we go on, and right towards the end of the book, I say, okay, now I'm going to guide you on how you're going to create a 1-year plan. So you're going to go off and do this. Again, maybe give them a download of something that they need to go and get. You're going to create a 1-year plan to reduce your travel-related emissions, carbon emissions by 30%. Yeah, you're now getting them to combine all of the skills that they've learned through the book, and you get them to create something specifically for them. Because a 1-year plan for one business is not going to be identical to another business. Every business is different. And what is a 30% reduction is different from one business to another as well. You're getting them to create something. So think of the overall, what is it that you want them to do, and actually guide them through that final chapter. You can guide them through on actually doing that. Now, I did say, you're not there. So you can't, there will be some people who will just zombie read your book. That's sadly life. Okay, there's nothing you can do about that. But the sad thing is that most authors are not giving people just the opportunity. If you use Bloom's revised taxonomy of learning throughout your book, look at any opportunity where you can get them to remember facts, get them to truly understand concepts, get them applying processes, get them analyzing their own results, getting them to evaluate their own options, and getting them to create new knowledge. When you give people the option, even if you just get 50% or even just 10% of your readers going through and doing it, that is true inspiration, because that's what you've now created. One of the nice, I'll leave you with this. Let me just stop sharing. I'll leave you with this. I've had, since my book's been out, there we are. I lost you there. I thought I don't want to lose you. Since my book came out in 2021. I've had like 50 plus 5-star reviews since then. But one of the nicest things that people say about my book is, there's one lady who said, I felt like I was in a workshop with Mitali. And that was one of the nicest things. Well, the best review I've ever had was somebody, this came last year, towards the tail end last year. And this gentleman said on Amazon, said, I read her book, and using her knowledge and her case studies, I've been able to secure 19 speaking engagements in 2024. Don't get me wrong, I'll take all 5-star reviews. If you want to write a 5-star review saying I write eloquently, or you want to say a 5-star review saying Mitali seems really nice and cool, I'll take those. But the ones that really, really get to me, the ones that actually demonstrate people have taken the knowledge in my book and actually implemented it. Look at a lot of other 5-star reviews you get, and even some of your favorite books. You'll notice there's nothing in the way of implementation. It's people saying, oh my God, this is really cool, and this is really interesting, and yeah, I really understand. That's one. I really understand this subject now. Great, but what's your understanding going to do? Especially with my clients are all social entrepreneurs, they're climate activists, they are B Corp founders. These people are not in the habit of just inspiring people to go, oh, that was really, really cool. That's not, they need people to read and go and do something. They need to put a fire in people's bellies and say, go and do something different, because what you're doing now is not good. It's either unethical, it's hurting somebody, or it's hurting the planet, or it's hurting non-human beings. It's doing something bad, and you need to do something different. That is true inspiration, getting people to change. You can't get people to change just by saying wonderful words and making them feel inspired in the moment. I think about those Instagram quotes. You get those Instagram accounts, which are like, you get an inspiration little, and that makes you feel good first thing in the morning. It's like, oh, cool. And then you've forgotten about it. It hasn't changed your life really. If you really want to create truly inspiring books that actually change people's lives, their businesses, their relationships, whatever it is, then you need to apply Bloom's taxonomy of learning and give people the opportunity to implement what you are teaching them throughout the book. And that is how you create truly inspirational books. So I hope that's given you some food for thought. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on this? Have you come across Blooms before? Have you used it before? Even if you haven't used it, thank you, Nish. Love seeing the hearts. But if you haven't used it before, in maybe not in books, have you used it elsewhere? I'd love to know. First of all, are you aware of Blooms? Have any of you heard Blooms before? Is this quite brand new for you?
I'd never heard of it before.
Never. Well, there you go. I'd love to say I invented it, but no, unfortunately, this has been around for, like I said, since the 40s, I believe, maybe even earlier. But yeah, do you now recognize that? Are you thinking possibly of your favorite teacher at school and thinking, wow, he or she did all of those things?
Yeah, I guess so. Less at school, more at uni.
Oh, okay. So you
I
had the
think.
experience at uni.
Yeah, but and it is interesting, and I've created so much training at work.
Yeah.
But a lot of that was following this without realizing I was following it, very practical tests and so on for people to do in the class, lots of hands-on, generation of data and then the analysis of data. So yeah, so I think I've been trained by people who've known about Blooms.
Probably, yeah. So you probably didn't need to know Blooms for other people. Yeah, and some people do instinctively. I mean, some people don't need to know Blooms. There's instinctively, they just know how people learn. You get people who are just gifted at teaching. But that's why, certainly here in the UK, you can be gifted at teaching, but you still need to go and do a certificate. You can't just go, I'm good at teaching, I'm just going to go and teach people. It's like you kind of need to go and do a certificate. And Bloom's, I think it's called the PGCE certificate for teachers. And that, and Katrina's nodding her head, and Bloom's features in that. So definitely you've been taught by people who probably were very aware of Bloom's and using it. But I think where a lot of people are surprised is that it can be used in books. That's why most people are not using it. I know people who've written books and they're using Bloom's in their coaching or consultancy or in their teaching, but they didn't put it in their book. And I said, why did you not put it in your book? And they're like, oh, it's a book. I didn't think I needed to put it. It's like, but don't you realize that if you want people to read your book and actually make an impact on that person's life, then it's exactly the same as if you're coaching them one-to-one, or if you're in a group coaching setting, or if you're their teacher. It's exactly the same. So yeah, use it. I'm all for taking things from other industries and seeing how it can be used inside books. And I wish more people did it. I think Nish was telling me, did you tell me last week that what I was talking about was used in another industry that I had no idea about, and it had been imported into the book industry? I can't hear you, Nish.
Right down there. Yeah, that was the user story stuff that you were talking about.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
What industry was that in, did you say?
IT software.
There we go. So I had no idea. So that means my mentor took it from IT software and brought it into, and she taught me. And I just thought, oh, that's just how it's done. But actually it come from, but that's where true innovation comes from, seeing what's happening in another industry and how can you use it in this industry.
Sorry, Mitali and Nish, what was it that you're describing?
User stories, how to create user stories. So Mitali, at the beginning of your presentation, you had that example. I think, as a user, I want this, so that format is called the Connextra template. And it comes
I didn't even know. So basically last week's presentation, Alison, I was talking about how to sequence books, how to sequence chapters, because it's something that people struggle with. They have all these ideas in their head, but it's like, but which bit do I start with? Like what is chapter 1, and then what should be chapter 2, and what should be chapter 3? And I said, well, it's actually really simple. You just do something Anish now taught me in the IT software world. It's called Connextra, never even heard of it as that, Alison. I just had a Connextra. Is that correct, Anish? Connextra.
It's just a template. It's called the Connextra template. So that sequence, as a user, I want to perform some activities so that I can get some benefit.
Yeah.
statement is created by a company called Connextra. So that's used when writing stories for software.
Oh, in Agile, the
Agile,
Agile stories. Oh, right. I
yeah.
understand now. Yeah.
There you
And-
go. And I was using that, and my clients are using that to help them sequence their books. And we had no idea it come from the IT world.
Hmm.
So that's what it's all about. But I always say the best innovations do come from another industry, and then you bring them into a different.
IT nicked it from the marketing world. We've been writing
Oh,
about
there we go.
user stories and benefit statements and things.
Oh, well, there you go. So it's not even the IT world actually created it. But yeah, that's what's great about it. But yeah, please do use Spoons. I know, Stanley, when you start writing your book with me next year, will definitely, because you've got so much incredible information inside of you. But that's what we'll be doing. You've got, I mean, we've just been speaking at an event earlier today. You have so much amazing wealth of knowledge that we need to get out into the world. But my biggest fear is we need people to implement. People like what you told me, like I'm walking backwards on my treadmill right now. I'm implementing something that you told me a couple of months ago. Saying, Tali, you need to start walking backwards on your treadmill. But first of all, I'm neurodivergent, so it helps me. I'm dyspraxic as well, so that's my neurodivergency. In that my spatial awareness is not very good, which means I can't drive anywhere because I'll just drive into people and cars and trees and all sorts of things. It's best that I don't drive. So, walking backwards helps my spatial awareness. But you also said it helps with my neurodivergency and that it creates new synapses in my brain. Now, I could have been like, oh my God, Stanley, that's amazing. And then just carried on with my day. And this is what most people do. This one, they read these amazing books. And this is why I started off today talking about this world is awash with all these books that will help you with every facet of your life. Why are most of us walking around with terrible lives, feeling really negative? And because we're reading these books and going, oh my God, that's amazing information. And then we just get on with our lives. We don't implement. So Stanley, you can be rest assured we're going to be blooming your entire book and making sure that people actually implement every single thing that you say so they can live the lives that they deserve. Any questions or any other thoughts? Have I stunned you all into silence? You're all like thinking of blooms, like, oh my God, how to... By the way, you can use blooms in other work as well. We mainly use it in books because obviously I talk about books, I'm a publisher, but I've now started seeing people use blooms in other ways, so even in long form blog posts, you can think, well, actually, how can I, rather than just write a blog post, how can I leave people with things to do, action points, go and do this, go and do that. Again, you're not there, so many people won't do it because people are lazy. People like just reading and then getting on with their lives. But even if you just get a few people that go, actually, I'll go and do that, that's a win for you. Someone's not just reading your content, they're actually implementing what you've just advised them. Yeah. So before you go, we're coming to the end now. So let me show you.
Could I ask a question?
Of course you can, Alan.
Right. Going back to last Friday, you said the reason people write books are for therapy, credibility, as a business card, or they want to be a bestseller.
Not just, it could be a combination of those or even all of the above.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I had a major mindset shift when I was 16.
Okay.
And I've been teaching and training and coaching mindset from that point onwards for the last 63 years.
Okay.
Now, the reason I wrote my first 3 books was none of those, but because of mindset, having lost my eyesight, I wanted that personal achievement of achieving something after I'd lost my eyesight. So I had to learn software for the blind to get back on a computer. I had to learn to touch type, and then I had to write the books.
Yes.
So that was for personal achievement. Now I've continued doing lots more, but I've now written my life story. And you're saying people are not interested in people's life stories. They only want to know the, famous people because of the things they do. But
Well, if
I've written my life story
yes,
so that they understand, and I've gone into detail in my life story, so they understand the changes that that mindset has made. So I'm teaching them, so they're learning by example, by stories, and stories are the things that people remember. So that's what I've done through my book. And the other point you said is to get the people.
yes,
I'm waiting at the moment. I've got some mindset programs that I
yeah,
want to put onto the internet. So my
yes,
book
yes, you told
won't
me
be
about this, yeah,
published until I've got those links. Then I
yeah,
can get those people back to me.
yes,
But coaching isn't putting ideas into people's mind. Coaching is actually bringing out their own ideas, so
yes,
that
creating
so
new
they build
knowledge,
on
yes,
their own ideas. Yeah.
yes, yes,
But
correct,
what I was saying is, my story is a full detail of my life. I add a lot of humor because that's my character, but I am actually going through my life in detail, and I won't say each chapter, but I am putting things there that they can learning from my experience.
So to recap, so I don't want to answer the wrong question. What is, if you can put it in a nutshell, what is your question? So are you asking me?
No, I was pointing out last week you said about the reasons for writing a book,
Yes,
and that only famous people will tell the life story. But I'm not
but then,
famous,
Alan,
but I'm telling my life story because I'm trying to put these lessons across to people about mindset, how mindset can change your life. But I
but
have to do my whole life story to explain each, or not each mindset change, because I identified 190 different layers of mindset people should embrace. You can't teach all of that, but I can teach half a dozen or a dozen.
yes,
some people will do a life story book and are unknown before they do it. And a good case in point is Dave Pelzer with A Child Called It. Nobody had heard of him, but his book, because it spoke so openly and there were lessons to learn in there, actually led to him doing 2 more books about his life.
yes.
So it isn't just that you've got to be famous to do your life story. It depends how it's then picked up. Natalia,
Yes, I would say even it's not even just how it's picked up. How it's picked up is how it's been written. What I meant by that, Alan, is when I say people don't write your life stories when you're doing it for egotistical reasons, when you're doing it because you're helping people, then that's completely different, and it is picked up in a very different way. So I think sometimes the difference is you want to write a book that helps people, that has elements of memoir in it. You don't want to write a memoir. Does that make sense? Does that sentence make sense? If it doesn't,
yeah, but
that's what you want. If you're writing an all-out memoir, then I'm sorry to, burst your bubble here, but yes, unless you're famous, who cares? The reason why last year the biggest selling non-fiction book was Spare by Prince Harry is because he's Prince Harry. No one cared about learning anything from it apart from salacious gossip of what's going on with the royal family. That's why it did so well. So you do have to be famous if you're going to write an out and out autobiography or memoir. But if you are writing a book that helps people and you're using your story to show people how to get from A to B, then that's not a memoir. You haven't written a memoir, then you haven't written an autobiography. You've written a guide that helps people, and you're using your story as a way of bringing that knowledge to life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they are all stories.
It feels like a fine line, but as long as you toe that line, you'll be fine. It's when you go over that line, it just becomes self-indulgent. This is my story. That's when it's not going to work.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm actually just, this is a really good time for you to ask this question. I would see if use Blooms and apply it to your book. And that will actually show you, so are you actually helping them understand concepts? Are you helping them create new knowledge? If you're not doing that, then that's when you can go, maybe I'm going too much into memoir territory. I need to pull it back. And, you need to break things up, basically. If it's full on, I was born and then this is what happened to me for the rest of my life, and you're not really thinking about, but each story you introduce to the reader, what is the goal? Going back to what I talked about last week, and then Nish was telling me about that was used in the IT industry, using that statement of what benefit does the reader get from you telling this bit of the story. If you can't articulate within about 10 to 15 seconds what benefit the reader is getting, then you shouldn't be telling them that story. Move on to the next story that will have more resonance. So
unless it's got humor.
Sorry, could I just clear something up? I think there's a bit of confusion here, Matali. My apologies if that's okay. But
yes.
The term story, and Katrina, you also alluded to as well. I think you got mixed up with where user stories come from. It doesn't come from the marketing industry. It does come from the IT industry. But the term story is interchangeable. There's a difference between storytelling and user stories. So user stories actually was written by a gentleman called Kent Beck, and it first actually appears in Extreme Programming. The purpose to user stories and the Connextra template by Rebecca, which was then created back in 2002, was to be able to articulate a need for some specific functionality. So the reason for the user story format was, hey, this user, so it could be as a bank teller, sorry, as a banking customer, I want to go to an ATM so that I can get some, cash out of the ATM out of hours. It's not the same, Alan, as narrative and storytelling, which I think is where the confusion is coming from. So if you're talking, Alan, about about storytelling, that's different to that format that we talked about. But I just wanted to clear that up. They're actually very different.
I've got a master's in computing,
and
I'm also a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and I've worked for 30 years in the tech industry. And defining what customers want and their needs and putting that over into how that's got to be implemented in the technology came out of marketing first. That guy might have put it into his book called Extreme Programming, but it did come out of marketing first and foremost. And and because I've got both sides, and I've been in the tech industry for 30 years, I can say where it originated.
Okay, well, I won't argue.
I won't CTOs to use it.
I won't argue with yourself then, see that you've got the expertise. But we can also go back to places like Bucky Formeister and say design thinking and Stanford and the D3 school as to where that kind of stuff came from. So there is an element, Katrina, absolutely, of user story narrative. Where all of those double diamonds.
Yeah, narrative is only used in promotion and marketing. And that marketing is so much bigger than that. We'll take this offline, Nish.
Sure.
You guys need to chat about this. I bet you guys can talk hours on this. Yeah, I'll introduce you guys.
Just to close it off, the Connextra template that you're using is actually Rachel's work back in 2002. But that's where I think the confusion.
I didn't even know it was called Connextra. I was just my mentor, my publishing mentor, taught me that when she was teaching me how to help people write books. So sure. It's not interesting. But yeah, Alan, regarding what you said regarding humor is wonderful in a book, but again, if you're just making people laugh for the sake of making people laugh, are you really getting what you wanted from that book? The goal of your book is to help people with their mindset, and ultimately, because you're setting up programs as well, so you want the book for you to be something that's like a gateway for people to come and find out about you and go into one of your coaching programs and your online programs, correct? So you want to make sure that
I'm linking them, but I need them to understand my character, and I add the humor in as part of my character so they understand the different way I view things.
But I do understand that, Alan, and you definitely want to add humor because you know you are a funny person, Alan. We've known each other for a while now, and you definitely want that to come across in your book. But I always stick by that you still only put into your book as long add humor, add the stories, add everything, but you filter everything with, but what benefit does the reader get from learning about this? If you're just adding humor for the sake of humor, then you're adding filler. So you can still add humor, but what benefit? It's say you talk about it, there's a humorous story in your book. The story still have a benefit as to why the reader needs to know this. So something serious beyond it. Think of some of the best comedians, like some of my favorite comedians talk about politics and they talk about race and they talk about war and they talk about pretty serious things, and yet they're making you laugh. But there's an underlying what they're trying to say. Does that make sense? Everything needs to be purposeful. What I don't want you to do, and what I see so many you're not a first-time author, but I see many first-time authors doing, is they just kind of download their brain into a book and then they wonder why people find it meandering and all over the place. You know, it's got to be very purposeful and very strategic. Only put information in your book that's actually leading people and motivating them to go and do something. And by all means, then add humor in your stories. But go back to, were you there last week, Alan? I forget, because you do come in and out of, but I know you've been quite ill recently. Did you come to last week's forum?
I was here last week, yes.
Okay, so do you remember when I went through the users? You just need to go through the users, and then you can still put in your stories and your humor, and you can still do that. Please, yeah, I'm not saying don't do that, but everything needs to be filtered with, but what is the benefit to the reader of you adding this piece of humor? And if it's like, well, this, you know, it's showing your character, which is great, but it's part of a story that they're actually learning something from, then great, use it. But if you're just sharing a humorous story for the sake of sharing a humorous story and they're not actually learning anything from it, then really should it be in the book? Remember, people's attention spans are tiny as well. So you don't want to write a book that's this thick. No one's going to read it anyway. So you need to make sure you have something that filters what they actually need, as opposed to just what you want to put in there.
Well, I want to put in my childhood, what sort of childhood I had, but I'm trying to do it in a humorous way, which is only, you know, there's no benefit to the reader other than understanding my background, how I was raised up, and that's why I had this mindset shift. So
then it is a benefit to the reader. Because the book is about getting them to have a mindset shift, correct?
That's the idea.
Yeah. So as long as you filter everything through from that point of view, then you'll be fine. I mean, obviously at the moment we're talking very strategically, this book hasn't happened. I haven't worked with you on this book, so we are talking, you know, very strategic. We're not able to get into the nitty-gritty of it. But yes, there's nothing wrong with it. I don't want you to feel like you can't literally put in, if you need to put your childhood in there, because you need to explain how that, because that will make them identify. Maybe they've had a similar childhood, or maybe they had a very different childhood. But as long as you make sure that whatever you talk about is of benefit to your reader. Otherwise, you are writing for yourself, which is fine. You can write for yourself. Lots of people do write for themselves. But then that's a very different thing that you're doing. You're writing for yourself, and if other people like it, great. But that's a very different, does that make sense? That's a different mindset. But if you're writing because you want to really make a difference to as many people as possible, then you take yourself out of the equation. You put the reader at the center of your book, and you talk about yourself so long as it's a benefit to the reader. So if your reader needs to know about your childhood, then great, put it in. But if the reader doesn't need to know, then you wouldn't be putting in your childhood there.
Okay, I'll go back through my book and I'll edit it again. Okay.
Use blooms. Use what I've given you today. You'll get the workbook tomorrow. Use blooms and just, are you helping them understand concepts? Are you getting them to create new knowledge? Just use blooms to see if that is happening. And if you just see that, okay, this section I've just written for the sake of it, but now I realize it's not really teaching anything, it's not really giving anything new to the reader, then maybe that bit needs to be chopped out. So it's a great way for you to actually go through and see if there's any waffle or filler stuff. So you're only left with all the best stuff in the book. And that's what you want. You don't want a huge book anyway. You want a book, that's lean, that people can read in 4 or 5 hours. Oh, cat. Always got to say hello. As soon as any dogs or cats on screen, I've got to say hello. But yeah, does that make sense, Alan? It will. I mean, I don't know how big your book is, but if it's getting quite big, then this will be a good way of you making sure that you only have just the best bits in your book.
Yeah, it's about 60,000 words.
Right. Well, I mean, just to give you, 6,000, I've published 60,000 words before. 3 of my clients have published books that are 60,000+ words. But just to give you an idea, the sweet spot for these kinds of nonfiction books, people want them to be around 30 to 40,000 words. That's your sweet spot. Now, I'm not saying you can't go. I'm not saying, oh my God, now I have to cut it down to 30 to 40,000. If you go through your book and it's all, that old saying, all killer, no filler. If it's all killer, then great, keep it at 60,000 words. No one, when people complain about books being too long, they're not actually saying the book is too long. They're saying the book was meandering. If the book is fantastic, people don't care if it's 60,000 words. They don't care if it's 80,000 words. It's like a film. No one cares if the film goes on for 3.5 hours if it's gripping and you're on the edge of your seat for 3.5 hours. When people complain that the film is too long and it went on for 3 hours, it's because the film could have been done in 90 minutes and it waffled on for 3 hours. So please don't think I'm now saying you now need to cut your book down to 30 to 40,000 words. If you go through your book and you think this is all amazing stuff that people need to know so they can have a mindset shift, then keep it. But if you do spot anything that's like, I've already explained this is over explaining, I've already given this story, I don't need to give them a similar story because I've already got it the first time around, those bits do cut out because people are not, they're time deficient. We're all time deficient. We don't have enough time nowadays.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. We got a little bit over time. Well, a fair bit over time, actually, but that's been really, really interesting. I hope you got a lot out of it. Thank you so much. Just before you go, I mean, I think most of you have already had a call with me, but if you do have a book idea, this is for people more maybe who watch the replay. If you do have a book idea, but you're not sure if it's one that's got legs, do get in touch with me. I'll show you how to do that. So let me just quickly share my screen. So, actually, let me just give you an idea. Actually, so this is just to give you an idea of what Blooms does. So these are 2 of my clients who implemented Blooms into their book, and this is the kind of reviews they get. So there's a wonderful gentleman based over in the States, Fix Your Firehouse. He's a fireman, and he actually shows people. I didn't realize this. Most firehouses, we call them fire stations over here. They're firehouses over in the US. I think fire stations are one of the big ones. The ones in the small towns are called firehouses. Most firehouses are run shoddily. They're very good at putting out fires, not very good at management and actually managing a firehouse. So he wrote a book because he saw how badly some firehouses were run. He was a fireman and he runs his own firehouse, and he created a book on how to help firefighters become more efficient so they can save more lives. And as you can see from the 5-star review, I've already implemented a few of the ideas on my first shift after reading it. That's what you want. These are the kind of 5-star reviews you want from your book. I remember when John got this, he was just like, I love the fact that someone's already implementing. They haven't even finished my book. They're already implementing ideas on their first shift. Dan, based here in the UK, a wonderful gentleman, Paralympian. He wrote a book because he found that, in a wheelchair, the only time he could actually stay fit and lift weights is if he had somebody. He had to have a second person with him if he wanted to exercise, which he thought was ridiculous that was the case. Because what if you don't have somebody with you? Now you can't exercise for the day. So he created a regime where people in wheelchairs can do resistance training without a second person there. They can do it on their own. And as you can see from the 5-star review, I use every day, not only for the workout, but to give myself a kick up the behind to go and do a workout. These are the kinds of reviews you want, not just people saying, hey, you're amazing, loved your stories, but I actually went and did something. I went and implemented something. This changed my life because A, B, and C. The only way you're going to do that is to implement Bloom's taxonomy of learning into your book. That is how you help facilitate implementation to get these kinds of 5-star reviews. So as I said, if you've got a book idea, do get in touch with me and book yourself in for a book idea audit. And basically what we'll talk in the book idea audit is just 2 things. We'll audit your book idea. What I don't want you to do is spend time, effort, and potentially lots of money publishing a book that doesn't really do what you wanted to do. There's so many amazing books languishing on Amazon that didn't do what the author wanted to do because it was a terrible book idea for them. Maybe a great book, but it wasn't a great book idea for them. So if you got a book idea, but you're not sure if it's got legs, get on a call with me. We'll audit your book ideas. If they're not very good, we can even brainstorm better ideas for you. And then part 2, we'll look at what process will help you succeed with that idea. So if you want to do that, all you have to do is go here. I'll just put that into the chat now, although I think most of you guys have had a call with me. But there it is. Just go here. There's a short video showing you just a little bit more detail with what I've already said. And then you just come here. You just book. Where's my calendar? There it is. It's a bit slow today, like my Zoom. So you just literally pick what day works best for you, what time works best for you. You know how this works. Fill in your details, and then that will be in both of our calendars, and let's have a call. Because like I said, I'd rather tell you, I'll be brutally honest, if your idea is not good for you, I will say your idea is not good for you. Let's brainstorm other ideas. Or if your idea is great for you, wonderful, but at least then you know. Yes, Stanley, you have to run, metaphorically speaking. Of course you do. See you very soon, my love. But yes, hopefully see you at a goal. Thank you so much for sticking by me. I hope you got a lot out of it, Nish, Alison.
I did.
Alan, you're
Thank you
the
so
last
much.
one standing.
Great.
How about
See
you,
guys
Alison?
later.
Did you enjoy
Yeah,
that?
this wasn't what I expected. I'm sorry I wasn't ready with my microphone.
Oh, it's okay.
I'll just be listening passively, but clearly you're all about learning and action learning. So
I'm all about that. I mean, I love, like I said before, so I do love doing workshops and masterclasses, but I spend most of my life talking. I get sick of my own voice. So the reason I have these weekly forums is I'll do a short presentation, a little bit of learning, but then I want to open it up and
I'll see you guys later. Okay, take
yeah,
care. Bye.
I like opening it up and seeing what, you know, the exchanges. So for example, Nish and Katrina, I need to introduce those 2 because those 2 have got lots to talk about regarding what is it, contract, can't even say it properly, but whatever it is, they've got lots to talk about, and that's what the forum's about.
Connextra template.
Connextra. See, I didn't even know that's what it was called. It was just something my mentor taught me. There you go. But thank you so much for coming, and I hopefully will see you at a future forum.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
Not a problem, Alison. Thank you for coming as well, Alan, and do get well soon, won't you, my love? Oh.
I hope so, but you know, I collapsed at the gym and I haven't recovered since. I've slept in my chair day and night basically for, well, since the beginning of August.
Oh God.
I've had every test you can imagine, CT scans, MRI scans, heart echo scans, heart monitor fitted to me for a whole week. They haven't identified what the problem is. And even now I can feel my head going. So I'm going to have to get back to my chair quickly.
Yes, go for it, Alan. Oh my God, please do look after yourself, my love. I'll send you an email and keep tabs on you, but do look after yourself.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Speak to you soon.
Bye,
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye.